The faint hum of the coffee maker filled the kitchen as my mother's voice sliced through the October stillness. Everyone will get something small this year. We're keeping it simple and fair. Her tone was smooth, measured, like she'd rehearsed it. Sunlight caught the fine china behind her, dust dancing in the golden beams. It looked like any normal afternoon, but that sentence clung to the air like static. I stood by the counter, pouring coffee, pretending her words didn't sound like a script. "That sounds reasonable," I said lightly. "Ethan will be happy with anything." My 8-year-old son sat quietly at the table, drawing. My sister Kelsey lounged beside him, her twins, Sophie and Sam, absorbed in their phones. They didn't even glance up. Mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I knew that look, the one that always meant she was planning something. Something that usually left me uneasy. I brushed it off. Christmas was 2 months away. My name's Morgan, 35, single mom, regional manager for a pharmaceutical distribution company. I work hard, make enough to support Ethan, and I never ask for help. That independence used to make me proud, until I realized it also made me invisible in my own family. Growing up, Kelsey got everything: the bigger room, the prettier clothes, the louder applause. I got responsibility. "You don't need as much," Mom would say. Somehow, that had stretched into adulthood, into the way she doted on Kelsey's children while barely noticing mine. "Mom, the kids really want the new phones this Christmas," Kelsey said, her tone casual, confident. "The ones with the good cameras." Mom's voice softened instantly. "We'll see." I took a sip of coffee, forcing a smile. Todd, her husband, worked in sales. They were fine. Yet Kelsey had this effortless way of making everyone feel indebted to her. "And what about you, Ethan?" Mom bent toward my son, voice sugary but distracted. Ethan shrugged, his eyes still on his drawing. "Maybe some art supplies. Or books." "Books," Mom echoed, already standing up straight, already done pretending to listen. I saw the shift, her attention gliding back to Kelsey's twins like a magnet snapping home. It wasn't the first time, but this time, something small inside me twisted tight. That evening, driving home through the orange wash of sunset, Ethan's voice came soft from the back seat. "Mom, does Grandma like Sophie and Sam more than me?" My hands tightened on the wheel. "Of course not, sweetheart. Grandma loves you very much." The lie tasted bitter. He went quiet, gazing out the window, watching houses blur by. His reflection in the glass looked older than 8. Thoughtful, careful. Too careful. By the time we pulled into our driveway, my heart had already made a quiet decision. I would protect him from that look, the one I used to wear at his age. The one that said, "You're here but not chosen." Still, I couldn't know then how deep that favoritism ran, or how one small Christmas promise would shatter what little peace was left between us. 2 weeks before Christmas, snow threatened Milwaukee's skyline, a gray hush settling over the city. I was buried in work, shipping delays, endless calls, but every time my phone lit up with Mom, my stomach knotted. She'd been calling more lately. Little things, questions about insurance forms, reminders about dinner plans, her voice lined with practiced gratitude. "You're so good to us, honey." Words that should have felt warm, but always landed hollow. Thanksgiving came and went the same way it always did. Kelsey glowing at the center of attention, Mom hovering over her twins like royalty, and Dad carving the turkey in silence. Ethan sat politely, eating what was on his plate, smiling when spoken to. A perfect invisible guest. After dinner, Kelsey leaned toward me, her perfume too strong. "You look tired, Morgan. Still working those long hours? It must be hard being alone." There it was again, the dagger disguised as concern. I smiled thinly. I'm fine. You should take better care of yourself, she continued sweetly. You don't want Ethan thinking exhaustion is normal. I said nothing. Arguing with Kelsey was like arguing with fog. You just end up choking on it. By mid-December, the cold had sharpened. One afternoon, I drove to Mom's house to drop off documents for the insurance renewal. Kelsey was already there. I stepped inside to the familiar scent of cinnamon and superiority. Perfect timing, Mom said brightly, waving me toward her bedroom. I was just showing Kelsey the Christmas gifts for the kids. The bed was lined with wrapped boxes, 2 large ones covered in silver paper and 1 small, flat package wrapped in dull red. These are for Sophie and Sam, she said, her voice gleaming with pride, pointing at the large boxes. And that one is for Ethan. A strange stillness crept into the room. I stared at the smaller package. Mom, you said everyone's getting something small. They are, she chirped. The twins needed new phones. Their old ones are ancient. They're barely a year old, I said quietly. Kelsey appeared in the doorway, smirking. Teenagers need good phones for school, Morgan. You wouldn't understand yet. I ignored her. And Ethan? Mom smiled. Socks. Nice ones. From that outdoor store. Very practical. Socks. The word hit me like a door slamming. I looked at the 2 gleaming boxes, then at the small, flat one barely large enough to hold disappointment. Kelsey crossed her arms. Mom's on a fixed income. You can't expect her to buy expensive gifts for everyone. Those phones cost $600 each. Kelsey's tone didn't flinch. We pitched in. The world seemed to tilt. I wanted to shout, to shake them both, to ask if they could hear themselves. But I didn't. I just nodded once, turned, and walked out before the fury in my throat could find a voice. At home, Ethan was sketching at his desk, crayons scattered around him. Mom, look! He said proudly, holding up a drawing. A family portrait, each of us smiling, holding hands. It's for Grandma, he said softly. I think she'll like it. I smiled because I had to. She'll love it, I whispered. But inside, something fragile snapped. I was done pretending fairness was just a word people used when they didn't mean it. Christmas morning arrived draped in white silence, snow blanketing Milwaukee like a scene from a postcard. Ethan woke before sunrise, his excitement radiating through our small living room. Mom, can I open one? He asked, eyes wide with the kind of wonder only 8-year-olds still have. We exchanged gifts first, just the 2 of us. I gave him new art supplies, sketchbooks, and the set of colored pencils he'd been quietly saving allowance for. He handed me a mug, painted unevenly with bright blue letters. World's Best Mom. His hands trembled slightly as I unwrapped it. Do you like it? I love it, I said, hugging him tightly. And I meant it. By noon, we were dressed and on our way to my mother's house, the place where love always seemed to have conditions. Ethan carried the carefully wrapped family portrait he'd made for Grandma, protected under layers of paper and hope. Inside, the house buzzed with noise. Kelsey's twins were already showing off new outfits, and Mom was fussing over them like paparazzi at a red carpet event. Merry Christmas, she said brightly, hugging them. She gave Ethan a distracted pat on the head. Coats in the back, honey. The air smelled of ham and pine and unspoken hierarchies. After lunch, Mom played Santa, calling out names with dramatic flair. These are very special, she announced, handing the large boxes to Sophie and Sam. You've both been such wonderful kids this year. The twins ripped through the wrapping, squealing when they saw the shiny new phones. Kelsey glowed like she'd just won Mother of the Year. Then came the smaller, flatter box. And this one's for Ethan, Mom said. Her tone softened, but not with warmth. More like pity. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside, nestled neatly in tissue paper, was a 3-pack of wool socks. Silence. "Do you like them?" Mom asked brightly. "They're great quality. Keep your feet warm," he blinked. "Thank you, Grandma." His voice was polite, steady, too steady. Kelsey laughed. "That's it?" No big smile. "Kids these days don't appreciate practical gifts." He said thank you. I cut in, sharper than I meant. "Well, he could sound more grateful," Mom added. "Those weren't cheap." Ethan looked down at the socks in his lap, his small fingers curling around the packaging like he was trying to find something inside that wasn't there. His eyes darted to the twins, now taking selfies with their new phones. Then back to the socks. "Mom," he whispered, leaning close. "Did I do something wrong?" The question hit harder than any insult ever could. My throat burned. "No, sweetheart," I said quietly. "You did everything right." But nobody in that room heard him. Nobody noticed the child shrinking into himself while laughter and flashing screens filled the air. Nobody except me. When it was his turn to give his gift, he offered the drawing to my mom, the one he'd spent hours perfecting. "It's us," he said, smiling shyly. "Oh, how nice," she murmured, setting it aside to make space for wrapping paper. The portrait landed between a pile of magazines and forgotten mail. Ethan didn't cry. He just nodded and sat back down, his small shoulders folding inward, and I sat there too, realizing this wasn't just unfairness anymore. It was cruelty dressed as family tradition. That night, long after Ethan had fallen asleep clutching his pillow, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the quiet humming of the heater filling the silence. The glow from the screen lit up my hands as I stared at the numbers on the insurance portal. My family plan. 6 people covered under my name. Me, Ethan, my parents, Kelsey, and Todd. Over $800 a month, taken from every paycheck without complaint. I'd done it because that's what family does. You help. You show up. You keep the peace even when it costs you. But as I looked at that line item, I realized the only people who ever sacrificed anything were Ethan and me. I thought of his face when he opened those socks. How small he'd looked next to his cousins holding their brand new phones. How my mother had laughed like it was nothing. Something inside me hardened. Not anger, resolve. The next day, I took Ethan out for pizza. He was quieter than usual, pushing a slice around his plate. "Mom?" he asked softly. "Why doesn't Grandma like me as much as Sophie and Sam?" I froze. "Sweetheart, that's not—" He interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is it because I don't have a dad?" The air left my lungs. "What?" "Sophie said her mom told Grandma you feel sorry for us. That it's harder for me because I don't have a dad to help." My chest burned. "Ethan," I said, steadying my voice, "that's not true. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. None of this is your fault. Other people's words don't decide your worth." He nodded slowly, but the hurt stayed in his eyes. "Are we still going to Grandma's house?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But whatever happens, we'll be fine. We always are." That night, after he was asleep, I called Jessica, my best friend since college. She listened quietly as I told her everything. "They gave the twins phones and Ethan socks?" she said finally, disbelief cutting through her voice. "That's not petty, Morgan. That's cruel." "I keep thinking I'm overreacting." "You're not. You've been their safety net for years while they've treated you like an afterthought. It's time you stopped paying for people who don't see your value." Her words settled in my chest like truth I'd been too afraid to say out loud. 2 nights later, December 29th, I sat at the table again. My cursor hovered over the remove option beside each name on the insurance plan. My parents, Kelsey, Todd, 4 names. 4 clicks. The system asked, "Are you sure?" I exhaled slowly, steady as stone. Yes, I whispered. Changes effective January 1st. The confirmation message appeared, glowing blue and final. I closed the laptop. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The quiet act of saying, "You don't get to take from me and still make my child feel small." That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years. Outside, snow kept falling, silent, cleansing, endless. By January 3rd, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Mom's name flashed again and again. I finally answered, "Morgan!" "Thank God we got a letter saying our insurance is canceled. You need to fix this right now." I poured my coffee slowly. "It's not a mistake, Mom. I removed you, Dad, Kelsey, and Todd from my plan. The coverage ended January 1st. Silence. Then outrage. "You did what?" "We need that insurance. Your father has appointments, my prescriptions." I cut her off. "I've paid your premiums for 3 years, Mom. When Kelsey needed help, I added her too. But after Christmas, after watching Ethan open socks while his cousins opened phones, I realized something. Family shouldn't hurt the ones who love them most." "Oh, for heaven's sake," she snapped. "This is about presents?" "No," I said softly. "It's about respect. It's about an 8-year-old boy asking if he did something wrong because he got socks instead of love." Her tone turned cold. "You're being vindictive." "I'm being done." When I hung up, my hands trembled, not from fear but from release. For once, I'd chosen myself. Hours later, Kelsey called. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she shouted. Mom's crying. "You canceled our insurance." "You have 2 incomes. You'll manage." "You're punishing us over Christmas." "No," I said evenly. "I'm ending a pattern. You all made it clear what Ethan and I are worth to you. Now I'm done paying for the privilege." "God, you're such a martyr." "No, I'm a mother protecting her son." I hung up before she could twist my words again. The days that followed were chaos. Angry messages, guilt trips, even a letter from their lawyer claiming I'd abandoned them. My own parents sued me for removing them from insurance I'd paid for out of kindness. My lawyer, Gregory, laughed when he saw the papers. "They don't have a case. You were never legally obligated to cover them." Still, walking into that courtroom weeks later felt surreal. My parents sat with their attorney, Kelsey, glaring daggers from the gallery. Gregory laid out the truth calmly. 3 years of voluntary payments, no legal contract, no duty of care. The defendant acted out of kindness, he said, and chose to end that kindness. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I stood. "Your Honor, this isn't about insurance. It's about dignity. It's about realizing that being family doesn't give anyone the right to take and never give. I did this for my son, so he'll know that love should never make you feel small." The judge nodded once. Case dismissed. It was over in less than 15 minutes. Outside, I stood in the cold sunlight and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I'd won, something bigger than a legal case. I'd won back my peace. That night, Ethan showed me a new drawing. Just the 2 of us standing outside our house. "Our family," he said proudly. "It's perfect," I whispered. Months passed. My parents and Kelsey found new insurance. The silence between us grew, but it wasn't heavy. It was healing. The next Christmas came quietly. Just Ethan and me, hot chocolate by the tree, laughter spilling into the still air. He opened his gifts, art supplies, books, a tablet for his drawings. "This is perfect, Mom. Do you miss them?" I asked gently. He thought for a moment. "I miss who I wanted them to be. But I like it better this way." "Just us," I smiled. "Just us." And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. More than enough.